Hey, what's happening guys, it's me Parth, and the Pixel 2 is about half a year old, so you're probably not watching this video to know the specs or the features of the Pixel 2. You're watching this video to hear my experience with the Pixel 2. And that's what this video is mostly all about, my experience with the same, which in a phrase would be mixed bag. So there are mostly two reasons why you've even heard about the Pixel phones. One is how good its software is, and the other is how bad its hardware is. I mean, when compared to the competition. That's basically the story of the Pixel lineup. In the Pixel 2, the software is even better, and the hardware, even though it is better looking than the previous one, it's still pretty average-ish. So firstly, it feels lighter in the hand, even though it weighs the same as the previous one, but that's maybe because it's thinner, so it probably doesn't feel as bulky. Now it's a premium build, at least on paper, with aluminium, but it's got a coating on top of it, which Google calls a hybrid coating, because it is made up of plastic and some other materials, but honestly I can't really tell, so I'll just call it plastic. But it's probably there to add some grip, since it's not as smooth as a metal surface is, and it's clearly not as premium as a metal surface is. In fact, pretty cheap to touch, to be honest. Anyone who would pick this up for the first time would think it's made up of plastic until you really watch that jerry rig video to find some metal underneath. But you know, most of the people won't really be concerned about this coating because they will anyhow put a case on top of it. But what might be a matter of concern are the buttons. So for those of you who have not been following the channel, which is most of you, let me tell you, I cannot live without tactile buttons. I need them. But these are just not good. Straight up. I noticed that if you press them from the extreme top or bottom, they would wobble, kind of like seesaw, and a lot of times you would feel like you've pressed the buttons enough, but you won't get a click response, let aside a tactile one. So they're clearly not tactile and are also pretty cheap to feel. There's also no headphone jack, and I personally don't find it too painful, but honestly, I don't really know if there is any sense behind the omission of that port. Like Apple, they need space for the Taptic engine and the 3D touch hardware. I mean, at least that's what they said. But let's be real, they also wanted to generate more revenue from the accessories, most importantly the AirPods. But with Google, there's clearly no lack of space inside, so the only reason that I can think of for omitting the headphone port is to earn more profit by selling the Pixel Buds, which is disappointing for the end consumer. But coming to the front, there is another layer of disappointment, which is, or are, the bezels. The Pixel 2, if you notice, is not as curvy as the previous Pixel. It's more boxy, which gives more room to the bezels. Hence, fun fact, the screen to body ratio of the Pixel 2 is even lower than the original Pixel. Now imagine going to a store where you get your hands on the almost all screen flagships initially, and then you check out the Pixel 2. It would be an instant disappointment. But even though this has bigger bezels, the USP of this design is just how compact it is. I mean, that's probably the only reason why anyone would even go with the regular Pixel 2 instead of the 2 XL. You could reach all the corners of the screen with just one hand, and it's not bulky at all, both in the hand and also in the pocket, which is great. Speaking of screen, it's a 5-inch Full HD 16:9 display, and there's nothing spectacular about it, and there's also nothing controversial about it because it's not OLED. It's your regular crisp, compact FHD display that you've been seeing for all these years now. It's really color accurate, in fact one of the most that I've seen in Android. It's got punchy colors, pretty well saturated, although you can actually boost that in the settings also, so that's sweet. The viewing angles are pretty damn good, and when combined with the front firing speakers it has, it's an awesome package. However, the thing with the display is that it does not get very bright. Like, it's not a great experience outdoors, and surprisingly, it also does not get dim enough for dark environments. I actually compared it to some other smartphones to make sure that I wasn't going crazy or anything like that, and turns out I'm correct. So there are some third-party apps that will help you reduce the brightness even further. The one that I use is linked below, although there is no fix for the outdoor visibility. But let's actually talk about the software, which is one of the two reasons why I would get the Pixel 2. We'll talk about the second one in a bit. So one word to describe the software would be smooth. It just flows. It's easily the best Android experience you can get, and marry that with first in line to receive software updates, it's one hell of an advantage. But it's not just about being the smoothest, it's also about a set of exclusive features in the Pixel lineup. Like firstly, the squeeze feature, which is not exclusive, but at least it's unique. So you can squeeze the bottom half of the frame to activate Google Assistant or to silent calls, which is actually the most convenient application for me at least. So whenever someone calls me during the class, I'm able to silent the call just by squeezing the phone in my pocket, which is awesome because the buttons are just not tactile, so squeezing to silent is the new thing. Now you won't find any options to remap the squeeze function within the settings because Google clearly does not want you to do that, although there is a way that can help you do so, and I'll leave an article linked below. But one of the things that I've just gotten adjusted to is the accidental squeezing of the phone. I've had my sensitivity set to a pretty high level, but even then a lot of times I trigger it accidentally, like when trying to pick up the phone from a table or trying to find the volume buttons. Basically accepted to that. But I just had this idea run into my mind. Imagine how cool would it be to set different squeeze sensitivities for different functions or to launch different apps, like Force Touch on Apple products. That would be convenient. Moving on, there are also features like Now Playing, which don't come toggled on out of the box. So you've got to do that manually, but the feature itself is really picky. So a lot of times it would refuse to recognize even some major titles, but then a lot of times it would recognize a bunch of old Hindi songs. So it really works when it wants to. Then there is also the Google Lens, which is also something that I could not take a lot of help of because most of the times it just gave me information about something that I already knew. Like in this image of the Redmi Note 5 Pro and the iPhone 10, it told me that these two were smartphones. That's it. Or in the image of this flower, which it couldn't recognize what it was at all. Although it did recognize this tree, which I don't know was maple. But apart from these features, I personally find the little things to be the highlight of the software. Like the new kinds of live wallpapers, which are just so creative, so deep, and so much fun to watch. Or the changing theme of the entire interface as per the wallpaper, which is so subtle and probably never thought of before. And because the software experience is just so smooth, which I'm pretty sure I've said before, you would believe that the performance is great too. And yeah, it is. It's basically ready for almost everything that you can throw at it, including graphic intensive 3D games, augmented reality for some fun, and also heavy multitasking between the apps. Although there have been some app crashes, and I have also got this to heat up during LTE usage, but nothing major. But finally, let's talk about the second reason why you would get the Pixel 2, the camera. So when it comes to testing cameras, there are basically two things that I consider. One is the control, basically the app, and the second is the performance, the image quality. The control or the app on this one is the most basic camera app that you'll ever see. It comprises of just a few things that Google thinks are necessary for you to capture a great image. Nothing more, nothing less. So it's got no manual controls, which is fine for most of the people, but surprisingly there are also no filters, but then you do have the option to apply them in the post. There's also a new thing with HDR, so it's got HDR Plus and HDR Plus Enhanced, although honestly I could not really make out the difference between those, but Google says they help in yielding better images, so that's the only thing that I've got for you on that. Google also says that there is no shutter lag when you click the images, but that's because the images are actually processed after you've clicked them. And so if you're lucky enough, sometimes you do notice the act of processing taking about a second for the images to be viewable. As far as the images are concerned, these are hands down the best looking images that come out of a smartphone, at least in this time frame. They're not perfect, but again, the most appealing ones that you'll see. And I guess that's the only thing that the end consumer cares about. They're really crisp, amazing detail, great exposure control. The skies are always really blue. The contrast is absolutely amazing. The bokeh is the most soothing that I've seen from a phone. And this one is not a portrait image, it's a straight, simple, untouched, one-click image from the Google's camera app on the Pixel 2. I didn't go much in low light, but it's just decent, although it does crank up the ISO a lot, so you can actually notice grain sometimes. But coming to the best part about the camera, that is the portrait mode. Again, just really satisfactory to look at the results. Great edge detection and also a very neutral color temperature, especially when you compare it to the iPhone 10 images, which are much warm. Oh, and it also maintains a wide field of view, which is very convenient. But this time I actually took more portrait selfies than portrait rear-facing camera images because I personally found them to be more fun. So again, the same things apply: great skin tones, excellent hair detection, and great blur all over the background. And I actually challenged it a couple of times. So once I took a selfie of a different person from a great distance and still does not disappoint. Secondly, the image was taken with me at a linear distance from the selfie taker, and surprisingly, it did not cancel out me, but still managed to blur out the background just as evenly as the other images, basically still retaining the excellent edge detection. As far as the video is concerned, it's of course capable of shooting 4K and it's optically and electronically stabilized, which is awesome. So you would notice barely any shakes, although I would say that the audio quality could have been a lot better. But that's basically all about the camera. As far as the battery backup is concerned, well, that's one of the things that left me disappointed, unlike many other reviewers, which is weird. I have got maximum of 4.5 hours of screen on time, which might seem like it's good, but on a heavy day of usage, I actually killed this device in literally half a day, which was probably even worse than older iPhones. But if you use your device lightly, you might have a chance at pulling out the entire day. But it charges quickly though, so that's sweet. Anyways, that's been it. That's my experience with the Pixel 2. This was really a mixed bag, but genuinely a lot of fun, all because of the software. Alright, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to share this, feel free to rate it, feel free to embed it if you can, and I'll talk to you in my next one. Take care.